Welcome back. This is video 2 of a short series covering controlled and uncontrolled floods of the Sacramento San Joaquin Delta, looking at actual history, recorded history. So I am moving forward from the first video, and we're looking at a timeline of floods of the Delta, and you will see that from the year 1900 all the way to 2010, there are substantially less floods. The really big floods happen in 1980 to 1986, and so we're going to go and look at those. One of the things I noticed when going through this flood review was that there's actually a difference between controlled floods, or ones that the state intended to flood an island for, they had various purposes, and then the uncontrolled floods. And that was another way that the Dreams report inflated flood numbers for the Delta. They added sort of inconsistently when they decided to add in controlled floods, because they didn't add in all of them. So that made it a little bit more confusing. So you can see here's a timeline, and I use 1930 because that's when the federal project levy started being improved, and that's when actually the federal government starts paying attention to the Delta and starts tracking records. So there's more accurate records along there. And again, this is only Delta islands. This is not any other islands outside of the Delta, as the Dreams report covers. So you'll see that there's a timeline showing accidental and intended floods combined. That would be Dreams report numbers, and then accidental floods only, which is the more appropriate way to look. I thought it was really important to compare, why did these floods happen? It's not due to lack of maintenance of the levees, it's just simply a water flow issue. And it's very, very logical. If there's a lot of water in the Delta, it puts a lot of pressure on those levees, especially if it's fast flowing and sudden water. And then there may be a levee break. So let's look at this time period from 1956, which is the earliest I could find details on water flow. And we find that it's all the way in 1986 where we have this record water flow year. And so that makes sense that in 1986 is going to be a record flood year as well. And you have to look at this whole year was kind of interesting year. Before that had been drought years, and you can see how the water's lower, and then there's a number of years where there is a lot of water, and there is a lot of floods. And so the state responds by doing a tremendous, state and federal government actually, they respond by doing a lot of levee repairs. And why does the state and federal government care about these levees? A lot of them are privately owned. The farmers pay to maintain these levees, but the state and federal government get involved because they're the ones controlling the water flowing through the Delta, and therefore responsible if the flows that they're controlling causes a flood. So the state and federal government get very involved, and they do substantial repairs, so much so that when we have the second highest flood flows in a 110-year period, there are actually only 3 accidental floods, and that's in 1997. And those are actually in the southern part of the Delta, down on the San Joaquin River. It's not in the Sacramento area or the central Delta area, or even down by Stockton or Bethel Island, any of those places. It's none of that. It is down further south. And in fact, if you want to see more about that, we'll be covering it. So where did I get this idea there's controlled versus accidental floods in the Delta? Well, DWR in May 1975, Edmund Brown Jr. is governor, and DWR does a water bulletin, their plan for improvement of Delta levees. And there's a number of pages to this, but you can't find all of them online. But this, I'm going to get down here. So let's see, I think I'm going to make it a little bit bigger so you can see what I'm talking about. Controlled flooding. So this map recognizes, and this is times 100-year, where there's overtopping or flooding of levees in this 100-year period, and this is from 1975 back. And this recognizes that the Yolo bypass area is and has been planned to be and is used currently as a flow bypass. When there are excess water in the delta due to high rainwater, they divert it through weirs and other methods to make it flow down this Yolo bypass here and then out into the bay. Here is another controlled flood area. It's called the McCormick-Williamson Track area. What you will find is that when you look at the DREAMS report, it is inconsistent how it adds controlled flooding islands as if it's accidental floods. And it ignores other areas that were controlled, and it makes no sense how they use one area and not the other. Either they're going to add in all the controlled floods, or they're going to recognize that controlled flooding should not be listed as accidental flooding as it does in the DREAMS report. Anyway, so let's look at one of those big flood years that we saw on this timeline. We see that 1986 is a big flood year. And here's the focus of the flooding. This is the McCormick-Williamson Track area. It is a controlled flooding area when there's excess water from the Consumes and the McCalmy River. And when it comes down through the Stone Lakes area, it's supposed to flow down this way. This is kind of always planned that would go down the east and west channels of McCalmy so that it gets down to the Clifton Court Bay so that it can get transport to other areas of the state. Well, in 1986, for whatever reason, there is an accidental flood of Tyler Island, and there's some photos here, and the state does an analysis of the major levees. Now, this particular document was done, let's see, it didn't have the date on the document itself, but it's May 2006 that this document is done, and it is a report. You can find it at water.ca.gov. By the way, you can find all these reports online if you watch these lines up here. And it's a comparison of the major levee breaks in the delta. So let's go down here, and this is a good summary. You'll see what the state says are the major ones, and you see it's not 158 if you just add up what they're saying there. So what do they say about 1986? New Hope Track, that's over by the McCormick-Williamson Track area, which is a controlled flood area. There's 900,000 in damage. And Tyler Island, that bigger island right there by McCormick-Williamson, there's 3 million in damage. That's a lot of money in 1986 numbers, but I want you to remember this as we go on through this video series. The let's go back to the timeline. We see that in 1997, second highest flood year, as I said, and there are just a few islands flood. And what are those? These are RD stands for Reclamation District. These are project levees at the lower end of the San Joaquin River, and the Army Corps of Engineers are responsible for them, and they repair them. And those areas are part of restoration projects going on right now. But the media made a big deal about as if it was flooding in the central delta or up by Sacramento or Walnut Grove. And while there was a lot of high flow water in that area, no levees broke. That was down in the lower part of the delta. So in this day and age, you know, the state has learned a lot. Federal government, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, U.S. Bureau of Reclamation very much controls all the water flow all over the California by the dams and weirs, and they open and close dams when there's water. And you can see that very striking decline in the number of floods over the last number of years. And please note, we're going to talk about this. This is Jones Tract, and I believe that was a field study for the Bacon Island upcoming controlled floods. I also would like you to know that in 2006, we have the fourth highest high water year in a 110-year period, and there's no flooding in any Delta island. And why is that? It's because the state has gotten so good at managing. They have combined operations. They have projects operations center up in Sacramento. They watch where the water flows. They make sure there isn't too much pressure. They have engineers that check all the levees. And this is a live website too. This is a great one. This is water flow right now, today. And by the time I'm making this video, it's February 28th, 2011, and we can see when you get the red dots, that means there's concern. That's a monitoring stage. I tend to watch Rio Vista because that tells me how things might be going on Ryer Island, and we can see that we're just getting close to monitoring stage there. So likelihood of a accidental flood in the Delta in 2011, it's not very likely because the area is so well managed. Please go to video 3 now.